I don't think it's an either or. Okay, I think that, like I mentioned to you before, experience and education do matter in terms of one's ability to do the work. If we're not saying, well, I have this degree, so I'm smart, I'm going to do this, without the experience. And again, not the experience of the first year on the job 40 times over, but 40 years of growth and development and understanding. And before you get into the job, or before one gets into a job, that there's a process that determines whether or not you have that background, that you have that understanding. Recognizing that you're never sure until you get into situations where you have to practice it and deploy it along the way. I think the same thing applies. Mm-hmm. The reality of performance pay systems in this country is, well, the data show that that's how much they've affected student performance. That's a 0.
Or Oregon Ducks, one of the two.
Oh, I lost my head there. Okay. In my case, it's a 0. Get it right. And the latest one was about 2-3 weeks ago. Nashville Public Schools. After, I don't know, I'm trying to remember if it was a 3, 4, 5-year performance pay system. Their results, 0. They spent millions and millions of dollars with a performance pay system, and it didn't produce results. Mm-hmm. The reality is we really do need to find better ways to pay teachers. When Christie takes a look at New Jersey, and he goes to Patterson or Newark, and he sees the per student costs in those districts of $10, $12, $15,000 per student, and abysmal, frightening results, I can understand why he gets crazy about this. But in our craziness, you don't want to start grabbing at straws and saying, well, here's the solution, when performance pay systems around the country have pretty much produced what the Nashville system has. You do a little of this and a little of that, a little of this and a little of that, isn't it great? And they just don't produce results. I think there's one system in the country that has some promise, and that was what's called ProComp in Denver. You may want to take a look at it. Mm-hmm. It was developed by the Denver Education Association, working with business groups, working with some legislators. A lot of the players were not only educators, but other folks. But educators had a majority of the say of that, and they did a couple of things. They kind of looked at different models and different options and different opportunities, looked at the opportunity for career ladder, which means, instead of going, I got 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 year, it was based on your performance, you can jump higher. You can move higher and more quickly. I think that makes a lot of sense. If we have a fair measure of performance, and it's uniformly fair, and it also measures the difference between a core content teacher. My favorite topic, again, mathematics. I teach math, and here's the discrete description of how I did, versus I teach art, or I teach physical education. Although I think PE teachers are going to be a lot more important if we really, really believe that America needs to turn their health habits around in the future, but that's a different discussion. So the concept here is getting a decent measure down, and then getting a process. And Denver did an interesting thing. I think they had an 8-year window to join onto the new pay process. And I think they did that because they did a staff analysis and said, most of the baby boomers on our staff are going to retire in the next 8 years. So if they don't like this new concept, they can stay on the old concept, retire, and we're not having to fight or whatever else along the way. I think you need to leave yourself a phase-in situation for folks on some of these systems. And then they did probably the key thing, along with settling on the assessment system and the process and this, that, and the other thing, is they levied they put out a levy in the city that raised $25 million, and they put the money on top of the existing pay schedule. So what was guaranteed was not only the new process, but the money. So that if I suggest that you're in a performance pay situation, that it's not going to be, well, we can pay you this year, or, well, we promised we'd have this, but we're not going to have it. I mean, Idaho's approach to this has been pretty poorly done. And without good relationship with the rest of the educational field. And when it came down to the decision-making on that, the trust wasn't there, the communication wasn't there, the relationship wasn't there, and you know what happened to it. It just went, and you know, people wasted a year or two. I know a little bit more about this because I served on the committee, the initial committee, to move this discussion forward, and I saw some promise at the beginning and saw the whole thing fall apart in the late stages, and just said, you know, I got a whole bunch of other stuff I can be doing here, you know, a district to attend to. This isn't really going to result in what we want, and that's to pay good teachers beyond, you know, the baseline that we have right now.